ordinance would allow the mayor to accept those immediately. And also in situations
We've talked about that, we just
where we
didn't.
get money donated to the student.
I moved, haven't been moved.
It's already been moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
25, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing acceptance of a subdivision plat for Commercial Center Subdivision Phase 5, Lots 10A and 10B, being a re-subdivision of Lot 10 of Commercial Center Subdivision Phase 4.
Moved by Mr. Lawson, second by Mr. Hobbs. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
26, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Owen and White for professional services in conjunction with the levy certification project.
Moved by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Fowler. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 27, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the lowest quote received for the purchase of flags.
Moved by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Johnson. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 28 is delayed. Number 29, to consider final adoption of an ordinance revoking a portion of a 10-foot wide utility servitude easement located along the right-of-way of Bayou View Drive and along the common boundary between lots 3 and 4 of Bayou View subdivision.
Moved by Mr. Johnson. Second by Mr. Smith. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 30, to consider final adoption of an ordinance revoking a portion of the 50-foot right-of-way of Bayou View Drive located adjacent to lots 6, 7, 8, and 9 in Bayou View subdivision.
Moved by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fowler. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. President, the administration requests the delay of items number 31, 32, and we'll go to 33 to
Those
consider.
delayed?
Yes, sir.
Delayed at 31.
31 and 32 are delayed. 33, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the low bid submitted for new kitchen for the Alexandria Zoo.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Fowler. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 34, to consider final adoption of an ordinance annexing 24.2397 acres of property to New York Avenue and Interstate 49 in sections 36 and 40 of T3N R1 West Southwestern Land District.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Fowler. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 35, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing acceptance of a subdivision plat for Carlisle Place subdivision.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Lawson, second by Mr. Fowler.
That we,
Discussion?
until, it's the one we're delaying.
No, sir.
37. Hadaway.
30. Way is, I don't know.
Right.
I move.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
36, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing acceptance of a subdivision plat for Stratford Manor subdivision.
Move.
Moved by Mr. Fowler, second by Mr. Smith. Discussion? All in favor?
37 is the one we're gonna move.
Motion carries.
Mr. Lawson, item number 37 is delayed.
I move. We delay.
Second, moved by Mr. Lawson, second by Mr. Hobbs for delay.
Number 38,
It's too fast.
to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, New Orleans Field Office for a housing and urban development faith and community-based training event to be held in Convention Hall.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Fowler. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries.
Number 39, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to renew the existing contract with Electrical Reliability Services for annual inspection, testing, and certification of breakers and transformers for DG Hunter Generating Station.
Moved by Mr. Fowler, second by Mr. Lawson. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries.
Number 40, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the Office of Family Support for transportation bus services.
Moved by Mr. Hobbs, second by Mr. Fowler. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries.
Number 41, to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the low bid submitted for 2009 model year vehicles.
Moved by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Lawson. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries.
Number 42 is delayed and referred to the Personnel Committee. Is that right?
I understand y'all are delaying 42. If y'all would please make sure to meet, because we sent it down so that we're not left without somebody in that place. But I
We
understand
will be.
whatever.
But Mayor, the reason why we're doing it is because we want to send it back to committee to be heard in committee. And that way we're doing it, keeping it in line with the charter. So you know,
The charter, it's a resolution, so
but when we go to confirm a person.
Should have been on today's committee.
It has to go to personnel committee.
I know. I guess what we're saying is that could have happened today. It could have been in personnel committee. We just want to make sure that
But it didn't. It didn't get it, so.
I don't think we can send signals about the character of the person.
Right, well, it's nothing that we had nothing, there's nothing against the
that
person.
makes sense.
I understand.
It's just that we want to make sure that all the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed.
But it just leaves us without a director for the period.
Well, we got an assistant back there.
Mr. Marshall, it's fine.
But, yeah,
My only comment was that
Yeah.
it could have been stacked and ready to go to committee today. It's okay.
Yeah.
We just did, and it didn't get there.
I just want to make sure if it goes to committee this time.
It's going to committee. We're gonna put it in committee and we go to get it out of committee.
Too late.
We have enough issues with missing directors right now.
Right.
It wasn't intentional.
Out of abundance of caution in the future, when we do this, would you remind one of us to go ahead and put it on a committee? Because I would have done it the other day. I never even thought about it, to be honest with you.
To be honest, I assume that division director confirmation would go to committee, we send a transmittal letter and all those things.
Yeah,
It just slipped through the cracks.
It's no problem.
Yeah, we go it on it. Okay,
With the rest.
we go to public hearing.
Number 43, do the gavel. To continue public hearings on the following structures: 43 Eastwood, 510 14th Street, 64 Eastwood, and 1802 Elliott.
Well, name Van down with community development. We got a couple of recommendations. I got 43 Eastwood, want to continue until July 15th for the owner to.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Fowler, second by Mr. Smith.
July 15th.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
510 14th, like to continue until September 23rd. Oh, wait.
Moved by Mr. Fowler, second by Mr. Smith. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
1802 Elliott, continue till September 23rd, 08.
Move.
Moved by Mr. Fowler, second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Then a combination on 64 Eastwood for combination.
Moved by Mr. Fowler. Is anybody here from 64 Eastwood? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No carry. Condemnation. Public hearing is now closed. Go to committees.
Finance Committee, Mr. Lawson. Public Works, Mr. Silver's out. Legal Committee, Mr. Hobbs. Utility, Mr. Johnson. No.
No report.
Community Development, Mr. Hobbs. Personnel Insurance, Mr. Johnson.
No report.
Public Safety, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, I have one item, a resolution concerning assistance to the town of LeCount and providing a surplus fire truck to the town and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Move.
Second. Resolution.
This resolution.
Moved by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Smith. All in favor? Opposed?
A&E Review, Mr. Silver's out. Economic Development, Mr. Lawson.
Lawson? Yes. Just wanted to ask if, at the end of this meeting for economic development, when the room sort of clears, everybody's welcome to stay, of course. When it settles down, we're going to have on Channel 4, I'm going to do a brief, less than 10-minute, probably 5-minute update on Spark, and we're going to start doing an update probably once a month, if not after each meeting, to let people know exactly where Spark is in terms of programming. It deserves to have the explanations made as we go through it, and I'm afraid it's unfortunate that the coverage it's getting, particularly in the newspaper, has not been accurate, and I would like to keep people on track with this very important project. So I'm going to do an update on some of those items from the economic development, since it won't be a formal committee meeting, but I invite anybody to stay and listen to that presentation.
On Spark too, you know, we're talking about spending several millions of dollars. I feel quite comfortable with the team that has been assembled to advise us on the financial matters of this. I haven't experienced any trepidation in supporting that team. I want to reassure the public, and I think everybody on this is taking it very seriously, administration, the council, and all of us are committed to taking this to the community, the input. I've heard that certainly from the mayor, from the president, and this will be driven by the people, and has been driven thus far by the people. And by no means, by no stretch of imagination will we passing this without the founder adopting this, without the support of input from the community. And I think it's commendable to do an update to the general public.
I appreciate it, Mr. Lawson. That's one of the reasons. We were asked, both you and I were asked about a commission formation, and you gave what I thought were very legitimate responses to concerns and what it means. And really, we're engaging in a dialogue with each other every day. We're sending letters down and we're talking about what they are. Unfortunately, in a column this long, depending on how you pick and choose which sentences, and as you always say, whether you stop at commas, something can come across as indicating that there is a big disagreement when in fact there's not. So I'm going to take the time to, after meetings, to go through where we are. And also, we're going to create a website just for Spark that'll be attached to the regular city site, and it'll have exactly where we are, so that at any time, someone can go in and click on letters or anything else they want to see, and as they say, get the whole story instead of part.
Sound like Paul Hardy.
Ms. Marshall. Also, if I may add to what's been said, I would like to ask the administration supports communications with Spark, and I have talked to the mayor about this, maybe some town hall community meetings.
Absolutely.
To answer questions in all the districts about what people might have in response to what's going to take place in their
That
communities.
is the next phase, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Mayor, I'd like to ask your administration, maybe next couple of months or something like that, could you get an estimated price on what it would cost to put like a pavilion top on that basketball court, cheating pool used to be? You know that. A lot of people.
Being spent
Huh?
It's like a spark must be spent.
How about let's put lights out so we'll go at night?
Already lights, you put out lights already.
No, they got lights out there, they play at night, sometime it
I think it's a good idea.
right after the rain.
That's a good idea.
And I was over there playing basketball the other day.
Now you're doing the stretching the truth. You have been holding a basketball. Difference between holding a ball and playing.
Look at Miller Smith down there.
Man, I put some of them Jabbar moves on, they couldn't.
I understand.
Okay, y'all.
I saw him later.
Let me get one chair.
Y'all have them dreams.
I saw him later that day smelling just like Ben Gates. One other thing I want us to consider, we have again budgeted wisely. Mr. Crutchfield snuck out, but we have in our budgets and utility assistance money. I wish we would consider, there's always not monetary assistance with the utility bill. It's extremely high right now. I wish there's some way we can maybe assist. Yeah, we did put some utility assistance money. Let's see, okay, no, on the budget, I read that we had some money there. We put it in, that we did. But I wish we would consider fans or some other alternative that would be a little bit more lasting for the indigent. I know some other companies across the state are purchasing fans for senior citizens, and you never know if that fan will make a difference in their life. But some people just literally sit in the house with no air circulating, maybe one fan or something in nature. Maybe we can work with some agencies like the one that's C-Strong and various other agencies to help deliver the best method we can to assist those that are struggling with these high, very, very high utility prices. And anybody that's following the market across the country, everybody is cringing about the rising cost of utilities. So whatever we can do, I wish we can do it. It's a big problem.
Yeah, they had a report on TV this morning, and some of the major utilities in the Northeast are asking up to a 30% increase in their utility rates. Our rates, of course, we enjoy having a percentage of the Rotomarker plant, which helps us some. Coal's going up a lot. But if you follow the commodities and look at the gas prices, I think it was $12.47, something like that yesterday. Historically, at this time of the year, they've been in the $6 range, and that was high. So it's double what it used to be, and that will begin to be reflected on the utility bills as contracts that our supplier has with gas companies expire. So I hate to tell you, but it's going to get a lot higher. So, but it's at least, you know, need to know.
Maybe we hear a report too on from Cure. And then we hear something on the government access channel putting out information about how to remain cool, what to do during the summer, that kind of thing, and safety measures, and get back on track with our access channel. We'll put some information out on this. Okay.
Mr. President, we have two people signed up to speak. The first one is Mike Redmond.
Come to the mic.
Well, I must please adhere to the 3-minute rule.
I didn't bring my timer.
Well, we're timing. We're timing.
The reason I'm up here is on recycling. I talked to Ken Moran down there, and he's going to start accepting any cardboard, newspaper, plastics at his building on Broadway. So anybody who wants to in the city is welcome to drive it down there and drop it off. He would also like to talk about getting a curbside pickup for plastics
I think
and
we
stuff.
kind of hoovering around advertising.
Well, it helps the city keep more into the garbage.
I agree. That's a good way to.
And the second thing, I went through a class of cooties for a month and found out from almost every one of their policemen on how shorthanded they are in this city, and having to drive out there to the hideaway subdivision that's being planned, I think puts another stretch on Chief Cootie. That's all.
3 minutes, Mike. You did good.
Lynette.
That was a minute and a half.
Yeah, good, Mike.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Greg Germangus.
Did LSU win that game?
Yeah.
Yeah, take the
I understand LSU won 6-5.
I'm Greg Gormanis from LSU Alexandria. Part of my commitment and LSU Alexandria's commitment to community service, I've been involved, as you know, in Mardi Gras and Convention and Visitors Bureau. With me is the president of the Alexandria Mardi Gras Association, Chris Gillette, and Ms. Sherry Smith, executive director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm here in the role of chair of CVB and past chair of Mardi Gras, but would like to do a special thanks for last year's Mardi Gras in no specific order, not order of importance. I want to thank the Alexandria Police Department, the Rapides Parish Sheriff's deputies, all the city employees who went above and beyond, especially the Alexandria Zoo and staff, Lisa Harris and staff, and especially the public for our 15th anniversary of Mardi Gras being such a resounding success. A special thanks to the mayor's office, his staff, and the city council. And with that, we have some plaques here that we would like to present. These comments were read in the Congressional Record of the 110th Congress, the second session. We have a plaque that we want to present to the mayor on behalf of the city, a plaque that we would like to present to Mr. Marshall as president for Grambling State University, and a plaque that we would like to present to Mr. Lawson for Southern University. And I'm not
do that. Bring it to them.
and I'm not going to read this, but I am going to highlight just a couple of high points. The Alexandria Mardi Gras Association was founded to the day on the 295th anniversary of Iberville's founding of Louisiana. This congressional resolution speaks to family-friendly Mardi Gras, to unity and cohesiveness here in central Louisiana, to Juliana, who is our Grand Marshal, a renowned conservationist, to the Alexandria Zoo, which is nationally recognized for breeding Bengal tigers and other endangered species, to our inaugural college cheerleaders and classic chorus parade, to the involvement of universities throughout Louisiana, to the presence of the 2007 national champions from LSU and the 2003 national champions from LSU, to the celebrated bands of Southern University and Grambling State University. And I understand that it's my understanding that this is the only Mardi Gras parade in which both bands participate. To the Crew of Louisiana, who tried to foster economic development, to the Taste of Mardi Gras, which is an economic tool for this area and a fundraiser. And it was read into the congressional record by Congressman Alexander. So with that as backdrop, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to present this to you for the city of Alexandria. And I'd like to ask President Gillette to present to President Marshall a congressional resolution for Grambling State University, and Ms. Smith to present one to Mr. Lawson for Southern University. We thank you for your support. God bless.
Thanks. Thank you. Very nice, Greg.
I got a question about Mardi Gras. I got a question about Mardi Gras. Oh,
That's for Mr. Gillette.
it came up. Where's the chief? There it is. I heard from a fairly reliable source that we stand the opportunity, excuse me, where's Rep? Excuse me, Rep. We're getting Budweiser Clydesdales at the parade, and I guess what I'm concerned about, we have an ordinance, or maybe it's a policy that prohibits horses in the parade. Can we?
No, we can permit it.
All right. I didn't know, I met one of the execs, I didn't know if you heard of that.
red tape.
I didn't know if you'd heard that.
Yes, sir, you are correct. We are in the process of trying to secure that of 100% to have the Clydesdales attend next year's Mardi Gras parade. That is correct.
And Mr. Lawson, if I may add, Clydesdales are not real horses. They're emperors of horses.
All right. That's going to be a great addition to the parade.
Mine rather have the Hooters cheerleaders over
I didn't say that. I'm an upstanding deacon in my church. Yes.
Jerry?
You're going to do this presentation.
you tell me when you're ready? Okay. Good evening to everybody at home watching the city council meeting for June 17. From time to time, hopefully at least once a month, we will be doing a Spark presentation to apprise the citizens where we are in this process. Spark is a very large commitment of reinvestment for the city. We're talking about a total commitment of $96 million over a pretty short period of time when you think about how development typically occurs. There are lots of ways that cities reinvest in their communities. Spark is one way, and what I think that people will like about Spark over time, and what I think ultimately sold the city council on it and got some of the involvement of a lot of other players, was the notion of its immediacy in effect, number one, and number two, that it's open to using different models within the larger model that it has. So right now, just to be very quick, we're in the bond process. One part of Spark is about bonding, and that is a finance piece. If you break down the $96 million, it's fairly straightforward. $50 million will occur in bonding. There are two pieces to that, a $25 million bond on our sales tax and a $15 million bond that is on a limited tax bond basis on our ad valorem or on our millage that was just recently renewed. That leaves 10 if you're doing your math at home. That 10 we'll look at in the future, but that would make up the 50 piece. There's a 30 million piece we look for in matches. Matches would typically come from the state and or the federal government or both. Then there is a $16 million piece rounding off the 96 from our regular city capital outlay plan. So remember how our budget works. We have the operational budget, we have the capital budget. The capital budget is about projects and financing infrastructure and so forth. So you've got a 50 piece, a 30 piece, and a 16. Several weeks ago, you saw the funding streams presented. I would encourage you to go back and look. Hopefully, it's on our website where you can go and click into it, either as a PowerPoint or a PDF. If not, I will ensure that that gets up. We will start a website for Spark very soon so that we can make sure you can click on any letter at any time that's going on. And I think that's important for citizens. It is a massive project. Given our size and what we're trying to do. And the idea is to give a big effect to what's happening in Alexandria. So let's break down Spark in a very simple way. Think of it as three components. We talked about the bonding. That's part of the financing of Spark. That's not necessarily what we call the program itself. That's part of the financing. The way we have this at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and I think this is good planning on our part, is we don't have to touch that 30 that you may be saying at home. Well, Mr. Roy, how do you know if you've got that in line? Or when is that going to come? And we don't know what is happening with capital outlay at the state level or even the federal level, where there have been tons of changes occurring over time. And that is all true, and those are fair criticisms and assessments. So where we are now, we don't have to use the 30 yet. We don't even have to get to our 16, and we're still leaving 10 out to perform the first set of items that you've seen being put forth by the council and by the administration. So this big hit that we're taking so far will only use these bond proceeds for that total of $40 million, and you've seen the big effect that we have there. So we feel real comfortable about that. Now some folks imagine at home that if they won the lottery and they had $40 million, they could go spend it quick. And that may or may not be the case. It's hard to spend that much money, but I'm sure we can all figure out ways that you could buy homes everywhere and have a way of doing that. With city government, it doesn't work that way. We're constrained by all types of rules in how we spend these proceeds. And indeed, imagine that you have to have the right-of-way in place. If you're going to do a roadway piece, and we are, you have to have the right-of-way in place to go do that. You have to have all kind of other pieces in place before you spend that first dime. So believe it or not, it's really difficult for us, as Mr. Marshall and Mr. Smith know, to spend that kind of money in a certain period of time. And there's a rub there, because that is a requirement to do these types of government offered what we call general obligation bonds within what are called safe harbors. So we have to spend 15% of that total within the first year and 95% within 3 years. And you have to be able to have your experts certify that you're going to do that, that there's a good faith plan and good faith effort being made. Now, We're in the bond process now, that we haven't gotten past that point. You're hearing discussions right now. You see Mr. Grant Schluter and others that have come here. They're simply talking about what it takes to go out and get the bonds. A bond is simply a method of borrowing money that involves a long-term payment, typically, at least over 5 years, and is something that cities tend to do, or governmental bodies. We still haven't determined whether the limited tax bond, the smaller bond of $15 million, will be by competition or on a negotiated basis. That's something that we're still talking about between the administration and the council. You've seen council and co-council. There have been several news reports that have been done recently, one of June 12th by the Town Talk, and one June 10, I believe, in the Town Talk about what all of this means in terms of, I think the term used was consultants. But ladies and gentlemen, bonds, you have to hire bond counsel to do this. We don't have folks within the city's government, our city attorney even included, that can go out and handle this. That's just not the way it works. In the first article of the 10th, those folks were referred to as bond counsel, and then they later, in the 12th article, were grouped as consultants. It was suggested the city has hired 5 consultants with more on the way to do the Spark plan. That's just simply not the truth, and it's also not what was reported by this administration. The fact of the matter is, you can call a lawyer a consultant. I guess under the definition of consultant, it's anyone who consults with somebody on a professional or semi-professional basis. That's the case, but you got to have bond counsel. It is also very regular, ladies and gentlemen, and I would challenge anybody to look at other cities and what they do to have co-bond counsel. In fact, they have to worry about how those fees are done. It doesn't cost our citizens anymore to do that, and we like it, and so do other cities who routinely do it, because it gives you a check on one counsel. You get to get 2 opinions on the validity of what's going on. It is also quite permissible to have bond counsel picked where, in this case, you would seek to have minority bond counsel. That was a goal of this administration. And not only do I take the blame for that, if you will, I'm proud of that decision. And what we did was said, we'd like to see a minority bond counsel. We know that the firm that's doing it is quite capable, Foley Udell, and they've been doing it for cities, municipalities, governmental bodies across the state. But we wanted that. And so we went to our city council and we vetted out names and made that decision. And not only do I stand behind the decision, I'm proud of it, and I would suggest to look at Monroe and Shreveport and other cities, and you'll not only find the same thing, you'll find that people are doing that to open up more people. Now, in the Town Talk, it was reported that our choice for counsel, Ms. Lexing, was somebody who did criminal law and all these things. What was not reported is this will be her 4th time out on one of these. She'll get Red Book, and that's a good thing, I think, to have people that you're able to put in a position that offers them the ability to be in the Red Book and doing more of these jobs. That's not a bad thing. It was also reported that, or suggested that, another person who's going to serve as counsel on the small of the $15 million bond had given me a campaign contribution. I just want to tell the folks as they listen to these presentations, one, you're going to find that happens a lot in a city our size, that people who do business with the city, particularly engineers, are going to have given to everybody. But number 2, and I think this is more important, I made a promise to the citizens that I would hold myself to a different standard, to the avoiding even the appearance of impropriety. And in that case, I did so there too. It was the administration that reported to the council that Mr. LaFleur had given me a campaign contribution. It was not a discovery by the Town Talk or by a news agency. That somehow didn't make the article either. It made the correction page, which is not quite as red as when the big thrust of the article comes out. The point is, Mr. LaFleur's name was brought to me by council members when I came on, so I didn't bring his name. He's been doing this work, and his name was brought, and I felt, because of that higher standard and because of the way that we're trying to handle this out in the open, that the right thing to do was to say, okay, we can agree with using that person, but you need to know that he gave me a contribution. So I reported to them. I was not required by law to make that report, but I did, because that's the standard that we think we should hold ourselves to. And again, we think that that stands up to any scrutiny. I don't have a vote on the council. If the council doesn't want to use a particular lawyer, it's their prerogative not to do it. And so we think that we have a real solid legal team with real valid experience. And for the record, that is Grant Schluter at Foley Udell, Carol Powell-Lexing, a private counsel, and Eric LaFleur, who is a state senator and with Matuk and LaFleur. And we would encourage people to go out and look up what these folks have been involved with and do. Moving on, we have also considered hiring only one consultant, for the record, at least a non-lawyer consultant to do work. And that was what we call an FA in the business, and that's a financial advisor. We are still not sure if that is going to occur. We're moving through that process. So the notion that we've gone out and hired 5 consultants just isn't true. I know it was reported, but that's just not the fact. The fact is that we haven't hired anybody as of yet. We have a gentleman who's been working for the city just about to start named Maurice Moore. He is a chemist by trade. He came on to look at a major comprehensive program on all of our items or infrastructure out there that have coated surfaces, because we found that there would be some value in looking at that. We've lost some money, to be frank with you. We also think, given his experience, that he could be involved in a team of people to handle Spark. Now, why am I telling you all that? Sounds like much ado about nothing, or why are you getting into it? Because of this reason. This is a big program. It's comprehensive. It takes community buy-in. It is important to us that you know what we're doing and that you consider the import of our decisions. It also means that we can't run this out of City Hall on the 2nd floor. We can't even have it with our planning division, our council, and everybody doing it in what I would consider the best way. We are going to need help. It's a massive, massive program. We're talking about changing the face of Alexandria, affecting the neighborhoods that really need it most in a very significant and quick way. And that takes help, and it takes experts. And so I think the type of team that is both diverse, which is important to our community because we have a diverse community, and qualified, most importantly, is necessary. So I want to make sure that we understand that that's what's happening with this project. We have to spend the money at a certain speed, like we talked about, and that's going to be important. Here's what to expect in the next few weeks. What you can expect would be us bringing out what the CRAs are, the cultural restoration areas, also a time frame to start setting up town hall meetings in different areas. Probably I will go with the district councilman in each area, and we'll talk about what Spark means to their area. By the way, we're not married to anything at this point. It's going to take the community, either through the commission or in other ways, at the town hall meetings or both, to tell us where we are. So Spark, really 3 things. Activity corridors that you've seen us talk about, that's one thing. In the activity corridors, money is spent on infrastructure. The second piece of Spark are transportation corridors, roads. We tend to have a major transportation piece with every activity piece. Why? Because they go hand in hand in terms of making a big hit in your problems. Plus transportation or interlooping is what brings about the economic development. There again, you'll see bond money being spent on infrastructure. The third piece of Spark, how it all comes together, are the incentives, the CRAs. Those, I believe, take a commission, and that's what the council and I are talking about. They legitimately are asking why a commission, and we're legitimately telling them, well, we think the reason why is you're talking about deciding to give people incentives. You're talking about public-private collaboration. We believe a commission adds objectivity. They can come out with standards that are published to the public, and they can tell the public, this is why we made the decision, and it removes, again, under this avoiding even the appearance of impropriety, you remove this notion that government is just picking and choosing who's doing what, when, where, now. And that's important to us because it takes, again, community buy-in. I would encourage the citizens, there's a June 3rd letter we'll put on the internet, or about 3 or 4 letters on June 3rd that went out that outline everything I've said. That's how long that's been out in the public domain. And there's a June 17 set of letters that went out today. Again, we'll start a website. We're going to send this information out. If you would like to see some of how you might set up a website, go to the City of Destin's website in Florida, and they have a CRA program, and look at how they set it up and the types of questions that people were asking, frequently asked questions, and how they answered those. I think you'll find it to be an informative website, and ours will somewhat mirror that because I think they've done a good job of explaining how these districts might work. So, to recap, Right now, we don't have any consultants hired for Spark, except that we have hired bond counsel to do things. We are determining whether a financial advisor would add a benefit that Mr. Crutchfield can already perform. We're not sure of that yet, but Mr. Crutchfield and I both think it's quite possible given the requirements we have. So we have to consider that. We also think that it's important to consider whether there would be the need for a negotiated or competitive bond issue. We think a financial advisor can help with that too. We are open to an RFP process if that's what the council wishes. It's completely within their discretion to decide that. The group that was considered so far, Governmental Consulting Services, routinely does this around the state for municipalities. I think probably the majority of the municipalities that are comparable to us, Monroe, Shreveport, and so forth, have used them. So, you know, that's kind of where I guess that came about. Those are important things. Sometimes the city council wants an outside look from just the administration. They want to hear from a person with whom they have a relationship that this is something that's advisable. This is, again, a big program. So nothing wrong there, and I hope that the citizens will continue to ask questions. We hope to be able to set up these town hall meetings, and I will ask Mr. Marshall for some time in addition to these meetings that we may just have a Spark Commission meeting where we come in and the citizens can come and we'll answer questions about it as it goes. It is required for this to work, folks at home, that you participate in Spark. The assumptions upon which we base this model require community input from the bottom up. We don't wish this to be a government-down program where we're telling people what needs to happen. So the more you participate, the better. The more questions and criticism you have, the better. We have been putting out quite a bit of information. We have a limited news sources, I guess, in the area, so that's the reason for putting out a website that can give more information. But it's something that we have trouble with in government, when you kind of can pick and choose what things to put together in what order and make things appear in a way that they're not. There are significant tax programs that will be associated with it. These already exist in state law. There are already things people can get as incentives. Spark's job will be to put those together in these CRAs in the best way to work the best deal. I thank you for your time tonight and listening. I hope again that you will ask us questions and hold us to the standards that we should be held to in making a program of this magnitude work for the city of Alexandria. Thanks a lot.
Mayor, we just want to, I'd like to make it clear from, I know from the council standpoint, I know Mr. Marshall, and I would say, I know Mr. Lawson and all of that, we knew Mr. LaFour last year, when we talked about the utility system and all.
Yes.
And we were, and that was one of our recommendations. I mean, I don't want anybody to think that you'd be taking that, because that was one of our recommendations. And before we do that, and we also had talked about Miss Karen Carter, that she had done some bonds for, you know, we went to New York before, but she's on the bond commission. And we had discussed these things, and I want you to feel like you were taking that by yourself.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Smith.
We also, I know we discussed between these councilmen, that Gordon King, you know, and
Mr. Thompson, Nandy
Thompson. Nandy Thompson used to work with Cruz and Associates, and he knows bonding and all this stuff. I mean, it's unheard of, and he had been working with us before. And the council, and I'm talking to Mr. Lawson and the rest of them, we felt that we wanted to bring that consulting company in because to bog down our administration, Mr. Crutchfield and the rest of them, that they had the expertise, they had been working with Monroe and all the rest of these cities, and with the LMA. And what they were doing with the LMA, with the gas and all that, that we needed them to help us and make sure that we had a check and balance system.
I appreciate that.
And we asked them, and that's what, we asked them to bring that consulting company on board. And that's what we like to see.
And Gordon King, for those at home, Gordon was a longtime head at LMA, and so there, of course, are benefits to that the city, or at least the council, was wanting to benefit from, those relationships that are built, that knowledge base that is built. And again, I just think that is not only an appropriate thing for us to do, but it's important when you move through a process this big that you have those things in place. And so while I'm not trying to be critical of one news medium, I'm suggesting that in limited space you can get limited information. And this is too important not to get the whole of the information out there. And I can give an example. The article was written and said, the city hired Mr. Moore. I've explained that he was not hired for Spark, but he may be used at some point. And then it says in the engineering firm, Providence Engineering and Environmental, and they're expected to be involved in parts of Spark. So you count this other group, and I see Mr. Marshall looking at me a little perplexed too. Now you've counted this other group to come to this number of 5, which seems arbitrary, when we've hired no consultant, unless you count bond counsel. I'll give the town talk that one, I guess. But the funny thing is, the article before that, they didn't count bond counsel as a consultant. That only happened later. But anyway, it's funny. The environmental group that we hired is for the cleanup and doing the phase 1 out there. Now, can you loosely say that because Spark in the CRA on the riverfront piece could address the foundry, that connection of a consultant could be made? I guess you could, but I wouldn't have. You'd have to really stretch it. They weren't hired for that reason. They were hired to do a phase 1. That phase 1, as you know, Mr. Marshall, I know that's why you're laughing, would have been done anyway, regardless of if we were talking about Spark. We had to do a phase 1. So that's an example of what can happen.
Well, we had to hire them because they made it from the Shaw Group.
That's right.
We left the Shaw Group, and we were too expensive for us to find. So we had to put that other group on board right away.
That's right. And so I'm addressing that because I get calls from people. I ran on a platform about not overusing consultants. We have a real strict, I think, certification policy to use them. And so when constituents call and say, you hired 5 consultants, what are they doing? And I say, I didn't. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I had to go read the articles to see what I had allegedly done, and I'm just trying to explain that. We're going to address these issues on this important program when they creep up, and we're going to do it because you as citizens deserve to know what we're doing here at City Hall. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to also inject something else in that, like when we talking about the consultants. The ordinance is there authorizing the administration to hire the consultants that we needed, like for the phase 1. The minutes of the city council meeting is public, that anybody at any time can get a copy. So it's not something that's new. If you got a concern or an issue, hey, come look it up. It's here.
Well, and if you do interviews that last 10 and 20 minutes at a time and you're going through these things and it comes out, now understand again, limited space, you got an editor, lots of things can occur along the way. It's just important that we're not losing sight of what Spark is about and what it's for with things that are perfectly permissible. Look, everybody needs to understand papers have a right to be skeptical. That is the job of the media. Their job, essentially, gentlemen, is not necessarily to believe what we say. On the other hand, you have to report it accurately and in the spirit of what occurred. And to suggest that we had hired 5 consultants for Spark, other than bond counsel, is inaccurate to me, just plain and simple. I don't know any other way to put it. We haven't hired anybody yet for Spark other than proposed the bond counsel, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, occurs by law. Their fees are set. All of those things are done in a way that's as transparent as it can be, at least on a competitive bond issue, which is where we are at this point. If things change, we're going to inform the citizens right away. If we move to a negotiated bond issue, we're going to explain why. By law, the $25 million, because it's a sales tax issue, has to be done the way it's being done. So there's no choice there. And the fees are set. And that's the one where we brought in a co-bond counsel, Miss Carol Powell-Lexing. Again, a decision I not only stand behind, I'm proud of having made.
Mayor, if you could, for the community at large that's viewing your statements this evening, one of the big questions the community is asking, how soon will we see some activity in our communities, in our neighborhoods, so far as Spark is concerned? That's one of the biggest questions that's been asked. When will we see things in action take place?
I can tell you this, Mr. Johnson, that a couple of days ago, the city engineer asked me if he could go ahead and start the process for cotton, which means that we are already looking at coming around with 6 and 4Z. We've all talked and believe that's probably one of the best things to start. I really think this end of it would be nice to start. I also think that the minute, and let me give you a shorter answer. In October, we should start, or November, the proceeds can start coming in. I'd like to see us moving Roosevelt toward putting together our housing pieces out here in South Alexandria and in Mr. Smith's district, the lower third area, so that can start. But I think we need to move on the transportation pieces right away. I think we can start Sugar House right away. So you're talking about this year. In 2008, Spark will be moving. There will be action taken that's specifically a part of Spark.
Right.
This year. Thank you.